Hello and welcome to Third Eye Thinkers. I'm your host, Michelle Welch.
And I'm your host, Megan Benanti. Thank you so much for listening in today.
Well, today we are going to talk about a lot of things going on with the moon and
Mercury Retrograde.
Yeah, and spring equinox.
Yeah, a lot of good things and interesting things happening, and we felt like we would address that. So
yeah, so we were talking about right before the show about the fact that some stuff's always going on with the moon. I mean, we used to have things at Soultopia. I was telling you that like literally the minute I'd get over one, we were having another one. It'd be like full moon, new moon. And I was like, okay, there's never a break because, the moon's always busy, right?
Absolutely.
But the moon's really been busy January, February, and March were all super moons. Mm-hmm. And then March, we've had a lot going on with Mercury retrograde, spring equinox, and this super full moon, and just a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And so we wanted to talk about kind of some of those effects and some stories we've had. We actually asked for you guys to post on our Facebook page because we wanted to hear your stories too. And we didn't get a lot of response on that, which is okay. But do feel free to contact us with things that you want to talk about or stories that you have that, we can plug in at different times. Leave us comments. We're always up for that kind of information.
It was interesting. We had on one of our, and I don't know if it was Intuitive Insights, but one of my groups, there was a poll and it lasted for like 2 weeks. Does Mercury retrograde affect you? How do you feel about it? And I think it ended up about 80% to maybe 20%. And I'm not sure how many people voted, but it was interesting because mine at first I voted, it really doesn't affect me that much. And then I went on a trip and I was like, I need to change my vote. It affected me very much.
Yeah.
I really felt it. So I could tell that story if you want to, or do you want to start with talking about spring equinox?
Well, let's just, we were kind of looking into things. Both Michelle and I always do little bits of research here and there. Mm-hmm. And so today is the spring equinox, which, if you're in the northern hemisphere, so it's the first day of spring. And we thought that was kind of cool to be lined up with the full moon and have this be the last super moon of the year. One thing that's interesting is we normally have 3 full moons in spring, and this time we're going to have 4 because of the way things lined up. And this is probably not going to happen again, or it won't happen again until for another 11 years. And the last time it happened was like 19 years ago.
Right.
So it's interesting how the rhythm of things, that it's not like 11 years past, 11 years coming, that it was 19 past. So all the planets are always moving, and we really have to think about how that affects us. And the supermoons, some people don't see them as being bigger. They might see them as being brighter. Mm-hmm. But it's also going to affect the tides greatly. And so, we'll have bigger tides during that time. And that's why we believe that the full moon does affect us, is because we're 75% water. And, if it can move the ocean, it's going to have an effect on you.
Right. It's interesting. I don't remember the numbers because I'm not a big number person, but when you're thinking about the super moon, okay, so it's because it's closer, mm-hmm. right? Okay, so of course it's the same size. It just looks bigger or it looks brighter to us. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about, 140, I don't know how many 1,000 million mile versus the difference was like that when it's really exponentially more times away from us. I'm not explaining it very well, but when you really think about it, it's closest to us, but it's still so super far away.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, and it was really not that much closer to us. It's just that it's the way it lines up and it does look bigger. They said, I think they said the best place to really see it brighter, or one of the places I was reading, is actually Germany.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
I'm not going to be there today. I guess I'll miss that.
I
But
think I'll miss that. And of course, it's how the weather is outside where you are. One of the interesting things is, I read that the spring equinox, which really they call that, and I don't know, how would you pronounce this, Megan? It's the vernal or vernal. It's VER.
I usually say vernal equinox.
Vernal. Okay, so that's basically, it means the same, like equal parts, day and night. So that's right when that's going to happen today. At least our time, the best I could figure, is 4:58 p.m. So it should probably be right after our show.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect timing for us to end then.
Yeah, I
So
think that's pretty cool. And so it's the, introduction of all things spring. It's also the time of the goddess Ostera, which I'm very interested in, because that's the pagan goddess that a lot of our Easter beliefs came from. She has, as one of her symbols, or her animal totem would be the hare. And then she was all about fertility and new beginnings. And so she had eggs, too, to represent birth and fertility. And that's where the Easter traditions came from, of the Easter and the bunny.
I always wondered, like, how the heck did we get bunnies and eggs? Like, the fact even those went together. But that makes sense, because that would be the merging of different cultures to, connect the dots, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
so that happened. We've talked about it before, and it's when Christianity or Catholicism, whichever, when it came into certain areas, and they had these, what I would call pagan ways. They were, persuaded and tried to win them over to the Christian ways. And I'm not knocking one or the other. I'm just saying this is historically what happened. And so a lot of, they would maybe want all of those things to, anything you believed pagan-wise, they wanted you to believe what they believed in a Christian way, right? The missionaries, whoever it was. And they finally would come to the realization that, okay, we can't get them to get rid of all of their beliefs. So they integrated some of the beliefs into the Christian religion, including calendars and all that kind of stuff too. And so, like for Christmas, of course, the Christmas tree, that was integrated because of the pagan practices. So it's kind of interesting to look at it. But yeah, she's an interesting, we have a bracelet for her, and it has all kinds of, it's a hard one to make, because I put all kinds of crystals on it, because I wanted it to look like Easter eggs. And I was like, who designed this bracelet? They were not very wise. It was me. And of course, but it's the hair, she represents like kind of all things spring, although there's a Cordelia goddess that is like May 1st. And she's also new beginnings and spring and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and especially up north, May might feel a little more like spring than today would for a
other
lot of
countries
people.
too. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I try to figure out every time I've gone over these things with the moon. I try to figure out all of the tilting, all the astronomy of it. Okay, I'm not even saying astrology. I'm saying astronomy. Yeah, and it's just not my gifting. But I can tell you that I do feel it much more. I mean, I can say this is what's going on, and this is how it's affecting us, and this is what other people say how it's affecting us. But really, my understanding of the equinox is really when it's right. The sun is right over the equator, right, and it happens 2 times: one in the spring, one in the fall, and it depends on which hemisphere you're in, which will dictate what season you're in. And in the fall, it's in September. And so that would be the autumn one, right? And so, like you said, whether you're in the northern hemisphere or the southern, it dictates, what season you're going to be in. So we have that and the supermoon. But the one that just gets me, full moons do get me. I mean, I do feel them. But the Mercury retrograde that we're still in, I have to admit, it has kicked my tail this time.
See, and I feel more sensitive to Mercury retrogrades than I do to lunar energy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of that.
Okay. Well, do you want me to tell my little story first? Or,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna, and if we have anybody, Matt, I'm gonna give you a little story of mine. I used to really be like, I would even write about this, like, you're stronger than the planet. You yourself are a planet. You're, blah blah blah. Well, I got shown how wrong I was. Actually, I was very much corrected by the universe on this Mercury retrograde. It started on the 5th, and of course there's a shadow period before it, a shadow period after it that can affect you for maybe a week to 2 weeks before and after. But it was the 5th, I believe, and I was traveling back from Portland. And literally and I mean this, like everything travel-wise, because Mercury retrograde affects communication, mainly communication, travel, and technology, just to keep it simple. Contracts, things like that, but that's communication. So, I mean it. Like, from the fact that the airplane time changed without any notice, I looked at it, it was said it was one time, and then it was another time. They wrote down the fact that we had a shuttle from our hotel, and we saw them write it down, and then next morning it was not there.
Oh no!
It was not on the sheet of paper, and it literally, we watched them write it down, and it was the same sheet of paper. It was gone.
Oh wow!
So, and I don't know if it was penciled in and somebody erased it, but it was not there. To none of the, and this was probably just poor packing on my part, because I'm bad at Tetris. Like Roger's really good at packing. Everything's perfectly packed.
Oh,
I bet
gotcha.
you're good at it too.
Yeah.
But it was like all of a sudden I needed another suitcase, so we had to run in the freezing weather over to Target to buy another suitcase to take back.
Right.
So obviously I bought more than I sold at this event, right?
Yeah.
Is what Roger said anyway. To that, then we get in the car, and there was a wreck on the freeway, and this is in Portland. I didn't know they had like Los Angeles traffic, like, and it felt like it. And then we get into the security line, and there was, I guess they love to search crystals and tarot cards, because I seem to get searched every time now when I have those with me.
Oh.
So that would happen. And they were already telling us at the ticket counter, run. And of course, I'm stopped and I'm like, oh, please, come on, send us through. And then we got on the plane, and of course there's this sitting on the plane. They're like, oh, they found something on the plane that they're going to have to correct, when they go through their checklist. So we're going to sit here. We didn't take off on time. It was just one thing after another as far as travel.
Yeah.
And that involves communication too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was really a mess. And I thought, wow, how funny that you just sat there and said it never affects you, and how like egotistical or whatever it was, or misled I was to think it didn't affect me, and it truly did.
Yeah, you really got tested on that one.
I did. Well, I believe it now.
Wow.
So,
well, mine has been more subtle this time, but I've been seeing it with myself and with clients. And I follow Monty Farber on Facebook, and he's such a wonderful astrologer, and he has great little blurbs every day that you can kind of see what's going on. And that first week of Mercury retrograde, he literally said the planets were lined up in a way that they hadn't been since the start of the Civil War. And I was like, oh, that says a lot. And I was seeing people come in really in very fragile stages, where this sense of the inner child feeling very incomplete and very in need of nurturing and sort of screaming to be recognized in our lives. And I had an interesting situation just the other day. I had a client come in that was being accused of sexual abuse of a child from eons ago, and it had just come to light. And there was nothing in the reading that said this person did that or anything, and I had no interest in judging one way or another. Right. That wasn't my goal with him. And but it was just interesting to me how all of this was suddenly coming up. And then that evening I sat down to watch HBO, and this whole show about Michael Jackson has now come out. And I was like, wow, talk about people really dealing with inner child issues. And it was just, I mean, so much comes up during this time. And I went and looked back at some Mercury retrogrades that had occurred during my life to see, that was a tough time for me. Was that during a Mercury retrograde? I mean, I was literally checking into some of this. And some things were, some things weren't. And nothing in particular stood out, but it was just interesting to me. But I am seeing people just on a regular basis trying to nurture that inner child in some way, shape, or form. And, repair things that felt like they had been broken somewhere along the way.
I think that's a great idea, what you just said, for people, an exercise that our listeners could do. I'm going to do it. It's a great idea, Megan, to go back and look at your life and some dates in your life and see. You can look up, you can Google when the Mercury retrogrades were, and to see if that had an effect. I think that's a really interesting exercise. Thank you for sharing that. I think that we should all do that because it would be really interesting. And one thing I will say is if you were born, you can also look up, and we've said this before. Well, first of all, we have had a Mercury retrograde podcast before. So you guys who are watching, go find that one. Go watch all of them. And there's a good one on there. We explain it all, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's why we're not explaining it all today. We've done that before. But if you were born during Mercury retrograde, it's said by some that you may have the reverse effects of Mercury retrograde. So that's another thing to keep in mind, which is kind of interesting. I've asked some people in classes about that before, and when we've talked about it, and they've said, yes, that was true.
Well, and even if, Mercury retrograde, so all this outward communication is a little complicated and stuff, but it's about inward healing. I mean, this is a time to reprocess and redigest information. And what I found with this kind of trifecta of information that's coming forward right now with the planets is that we really got to look at stuff, and it's time to reevaluate. And yes, we're going to be busy with work and distracted, and things might be a little off. But part of what we're supposed to do right now is just slow down and self-reflect. So,
yeah. Matt, do we have any?
We do. Yeah, we have a few people chiming in with some Mercury retrograde stories.
Really?
Susan says, usually not affected by Mercury retrograde, but this one in particular has her extra emotional.
That makes sense. Yeah. That
ties into what you were just saying. Yeah.
Andrew says it doesn't say how, but just says it's affecting communications with subcontractors, which I think is something that you had mentioned that might happen. And Joaquina says, I keep breaking things.
Joaquina.
Love that. Yeah. And it is an interesting time. So, like, things that have been in process for a long time, it's okay. They can come to fruition. So my website, I wasn't really prepared, like, fully with it being done to be launched, but I had somebody over to help me with some of the technicalities of it. So my new website went up last week, and I still haven't gone back and fixed the kinks and everything. And I got a text from him yesterday. It's like, hey, you haven't fixed these links and stuff. Right. But it had been in gestation since, oh my gosh, I think back in October is when I started working on it, and just been sort of slowly getting my act together. So, but I'll everything of that will be up and running and super productive by the end of the month.
Right. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know if y'all remember, but last week, all of Facebook was down for the entire day. And
yes.
And in fact, that has had a little bit of a lingering effect. We've had problems since we do a lot of streaming on Facebook here. We've had problems throughout the week up until pretty much yesterday. We were having trouble with things just not looking quite right.
Wow.
Yeah, and thanks for reminding us of that, because that was a very telling example of how things, Facebook just crashed everywhere.
Yeah.
That day we had
Davide
on for the Starman Tarot. And, I'm not sure that this one fits, but also in the news, I don't know when all this started, and Matt, you may know, or Megan, but it was the two airplanes that, they had to end up grounding 2 airplanes. We're talking about travel, and completely ground them. And that actually, they made that decision during Mercury retrograde because, I mean, maybe that should have been made a long time ago because they've had some horrific crashes and, you know, lost souls over them. But so I'm glad they grounded them. But that, because of that, that affected a lot of other flights and a lot of other travel during Mercury retrograde. So it had that effect of affecting a lot of people's flights during Mercury retrograde.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
And why is it they always launch new phones during Mercury retrograde?
I don't know.
That seems bizarre to me. I don't know. The family.
You need to talk to them about that.
Well, it just goes to show that not everybody thinks the way I think. Yeah. And that's okay.
And that's okay. I always bring up the fact that, you know, they say don't make legal decisions. You can finish things like you said that have already been
in process.
But you really can't not make. I mean, if a judge calls you to court and, you know, you have to go to court, you have to go to court. You know, I guess the one thing you could do before you sign off on something is potentially, you know, try to get a continuance if you had a good reason for that. But they probably wouldn't listen to, well, it's Mercury retrograde. You know, I mean, I'm not sure that they would dig that and have a good response to that.
Well, and, you know, I mean, it was J.P. Morgan who said, you know, millionaires don't follow astrology, billionaires do. So there is something to that. I mean,
of course, every president has an astrologer, even the really conservative ones.
Really?
So they say, yes, they do. It's pretty, they have their preacher, and then they also, they cover their bases. Come on.
That's so funny.
They're covering all their bases. Are there any more comments?
Yeah, Sage checking in on the Soultopia Facebook page saying this moon is feeling wonderful for me. So there's some good news there.
Nice.
Good. I like that.
Nice.
Yes.
I'm definitely having a need to clean out and purge and get things completed.
Yeah.
Although today, I don't normally start things on full moons, but I did start a cleanse today, that whole 31. So we'll see where I'm at in 30 days.
Yeah. Well, I think that some people actually will have different responses during the moons. This one has actually made me, this time, all this trifecta that you're talking about, all the things going on, have definitely made me a little more emotional. I will say. I feel like things just sort of bubbling up, a little more sensitive than I like to be or like to admit. But for those that are really having a great time with this moon, I think that's wonderful.
Well, and when I was looking at Monty Farber's comments too, he was saying that this is a great time for intuition, but it's not a great time if you're a really sensitive person.
Yeah, I did read that. It's that same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's
kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of tough for those who are pretty sensitive because I think it'll bubble up some things. But, you know, it's kind of interesting to me because what I like kind of about the spring equinox that ties in is I'm always like, let's talk about the sun too, because we always talk about the moon. And this talks about the sun. We're bringing two of our celestial beings together here in this, and it's something I haven't heard a lot of people talk about. And it just came to me that that's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah,
you know, today, because there's two things. We've got this moon, but we also have the sun directly over at 4:58 p.m. apparently, our time, Dallas time, right over the equator, right?
Yep.
So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I can't take that sun for granted. We need that baby.
Yeah, you know, because so many people lately to me are really focusing on the moon because of that. It's that goddess energy that's coming back in. But I really like that sun energy. I like that raw goddess, God, the god Ra, R-A. I need that. That to me is vitality.
Oh, yeah,
because I live in moon, I think, a lot. I mean, I'm a Cancer sign.
Too.
I'm a moon. Yeah, I had a reading with Monty about, I don't know, a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And
you did?
I did.
Cool.
And actually it was Roger's reading, but it was sort of for Soultopia.
Yeah.
But Roger had never had like a full blown reading like that. And I had a reading about Roger before I married him, like I had his chart and he gave me permission, you know, but he'd never really gotten the feedback. So it was interesting because, and I always forget, you know, my whatever rising and all that kind of stuff because most people are, but moon's like all over my stuff. And I'm like, enough of that. I need some sun energy. I need that strong vitality energy. Right.
Well, and you've got it.
Yeah.
You definitely have it.
So I will say this, along with all these blooms of spring is the allergy stuff. Have you guys been feeling that? I know that's a little off the subject, but I'm telling you, with stuff starting to bloom, I noticed today, and Roger did too. He said, actually, to tell you, he noticed that things are beginning to bloom.
Yep.
And so I was reading, as I was reading about all the stuff in the Farmer's Almanac too, because I was reading about when to plant and all that stuff, and I was thinking, oh, Megan, I'm sure knows all of this because a lot of it's March and it starts kind of now, right? And one of the things I thought I'd tell you guys is that this is the worm moon. They've also called it the sap full moon in the past because it's when the maple trees would kind of have the resin and the sap. But the worm is because the cold from the Native Americans, they would track the moon so they'd know what the seasons were and they would know when to hunt and when to do what. And so it's been really cold, and then as the ground starts to thaw, the earthworms will start to come up, right? And they kind of aerate the soil. And so we did that at Soultopia last year. We had a big flower pot, big huge flower pot, and a lot of rich soil, and then we got a lot of really thick earthworms, and we had people write down there whatever they wanted to release during the full moon, and because release is usually in the full moon and the new moon is when you're going to bring things in. And so we wrote it on some good paper that wouldn't hurt the earthworms, okay? And then we used pencil, which probably was really horrible for the earthworms, but we ripped it up and we put it in the soil because then the earthworms will they will basically, I don't know if they chew it up or what they do, but they mix that all with the soil, and so that's how we had them
breaks down.
And we had them release their intentions into that, cool. Or set their intentions and release what wasn't serving them.
Okay, very cool.
Isn't that cool? So we had big fat earthworms, and I thought I'd bring them today, but I didn't clear it with Megan, so I didn't do it.
I'm kind of glad you didn't.
They were big old fat earthworms. But it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, do you want to do a couple readings?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I'm going to pull a couple charms. And for those of you that are new to the show, the way we do this is we pull a couple charms, and you'll pick one of the charms, and then that reading will apply to you. And even if you're listening to this as a rerun, the reading will still apply to you, kind of to where you are in your life. It's just crazy, but it works. So
it does.
All right, so today we have a small handbag and we have a tree of life. So you're either going to choose the handbag or purse here or the tree of life. Okay, so you want to do one of those, and we'll do
one of those. And my deck, it's an oracle deck. It's called Earthly Souls and Spirits Oracle Cards, and they just wrote Terry and Sarah. I believe the last name is Foss, Foss. Cool. They're beautiful cards. And do you know what cards you have, Megan?
This deck is by Usi, Uusi. And it's really beautiful. It is a tarot deck. And so let's do two of these and one of those.
Sounds good.
And for each one.
Okay.
Okay.
These have moons. I'll show you guys. I don't know where you're zoomed in, Matt, but moons on the back of the card, and then all different moon phases, and then the reading, the oracle on the front. I'll put them in the middle.
Okay. All right. So as we take a look at this, so if you chose the purse, we got the moon card of tranquility. Excuse me. And then we've got the Chariot and Two of Cups in reverse. So let's see.
That's a lot going on there.
A lot going on. And so the first thing I'm picking up is, trying to recover from a little bit of heartache right now. And maybe, and honestly, there might be some financial stuff tied into that as I look at this handbag. And I know it's really weird, but you might have a real thing. If you pick this, you might be kind of a butt person. Either you have a good butt or you're really into people with good butts. I know that sounds really funny, but the handbag has kind of a badonk-donk feel to it.
It does, actually.
And where the tranquility, I'm not sure where I'm tying this in, but maybe that's what the focus needs to be, is to calm down. It's like you're running away from a situation that hurts, and maybe you just need to kind of sit and breathe through it and not run away from them or what you're feeling, but that you've got to process this through. What did you get with that?
So I see, now I can only see the person that way. I just want to let you know. Thank you for that. But what I see in this is a little bit of drive. You've been pretty driven. If you chose the purse, you've been pretty driven, male or female, to things that you are trying to accomplish in your life. Some of them materialistic, that you're wanting to put in that purse, okay, the money purse, taking the purse collection, whatever it is. And so and materialism isn't always bad. It's just that I feel like in this situation, what I'm seeing is it may be affecting some relationships. And so the money issues doesn't take a psychic, that's a tough thing in marriages sometimes, and relationships. Mm-hmm. And it feels as though this drive to achieve, and where you're putting your money and putting actually even maybe your heart into maybe some materialistic things, you might want to step back from that a little bit, where the tranquility comes in, and just take a pause. Take this time to just think about what's important in your life and where you're spending your money and what you're doing and what your goals are and what you're driving towards. And as Davide said last week, and at what cost? That was a different card. Right. But at what cost to your relationship is this drive that you have? Mm-hmm. That's what I get from these many things here.
Yeah, no, that was beautiful. So that reading might apply to two people, two different people in that regard too.
Or somebody, it may, something will resonate. One of them will resonate maybe with both, somebody or both of them actually. Yeah. When you listen back, sometimes you find synchronicities that we don't even notice when we're reading. So.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true. And that's what I love about us reading together, because you get such a different little mojo in it.
Yeah.
All right. So now if you picked the tree, or a tree of life, it's a tree in a circle. So that's why I was kind of considering it tree of life. And we're going to pull a moon card.
I was trying to find a full moon, but I couldn't. So actually, there we go. It says faith.
Faith.
Interesting card.
Yes, it really is. It's such a beautiful little deck, too. So we have Knight of Pentacles in reverse and the Sun in reverse. And then this faith card. Do you have anything off the top of your head? I'm not there yet.
Yeah, you may need to build on this, because I'm not sure if I'm totally there, but I'll just start. Okay. I hate to bring up money again, but for me personally, the Knight of Pentacles often brings up taxes, which are just around the corner. Okay. I'm sorry, you guys, but it does. And I feel like some of you may feel not prepared for this. Maybe you haven't put away your quarterlies. Maybe you haven't done the things. And so the Sun in reverse, it just feels like almost, and it's got on this one, very clearly the black on the Knight of Pentacles, this black horse, and on the Sun in reverse, this white horse. And so maybe you were a little not as prudent as you should have been. I'm trying to be more positive. Here's where the positivity comes in, is the faith card. The faith card is showing me that you're going to have faith that you can turn this around. And everything goes in cycles with the tree of life. So, but it's kind of a downer reading, but that's what I'm getting. So you're going to have to really get on it. Don't bury your head in the sand. Don't deny that you need to take care of this issue. And I'm getting very specifics on that.
Oh, that's interesting. And you know what? You might be picking up a little on my energy, because my CPA, they did new tax forms because of the new laws. And he forgot to mail us a mailer, and I had to ask for it like twice, and still he sent me like an email version. He didn't even have all the paperwork in there, and I had less than a week to get it into him. So
well, and it might be true for a lot of listeners though, because of the new tax laws, that could also be what's tying into this, and a lot of people just kind of not being real sure and not being as confident in the success of what they're doing right now. So just don't. My advice is, I'm going to invite you to not put it off. Get going on it.
Well, and it's interesting to me. So Knight of Pentacles, I really think of him, it doesn't end up tying in as much with money for me. And with the Tree of Life, I'm really connecting the idea of family and somebody really having a hard time moving forward, whether that is visiting or communicating. But I think there's some depression going on in the family situation. And it's really taking that faith. It's going to take your spiritual strength to get you out of this. So again, I got such a different reading, but totally good. And I love that you commented on the black and the white horse in each of these cards, because in the Chariot, we also had a black and a white ram. So there's a whole sense of duality in both of these, and that people are really struggling with this balance right now and kind of wavering back and forth. In this reading with the tree, I'm really definitely feeling like things are kind of out of balance. And maybe it's with yourself and how you feel in your own family dynamic, or it might be somebody that you're concerned about. What I would definitely say is talk about it. I would emphasize trying to have some fun right now, even if you're forcing yourself to do it. And maybe it's not something maybe it's something you have to do alone. Because for me, the sun, one of the real actions of the sun is to have fun. And so I don't know what just came to my head was skee ball. Like you play skee ball by yourself, but goodness knows it's always a good time. It's always fun.
Right.
So whatever it is that you do to break out of that mold. So.
Yeah, and I will say, just for those of you who listen to us sometimes because of the cards, because we do a lot of tarot on here, the Knight of Pentacles does not just mean that to me. That's just what I'm seeing.
Oh, yes, that's what you saw today.
In this reading. And, sometimes I set an intention for cards to mean a certain thing, and when they appear, I'm like, oh, whoa. One thing I do see, and I'm not sure where we are on our time, but I do want to say it's 4:58.
I noticed that too. Yes, I was totally thinking that.
So, but I see this flower of life could just be put right there where that pentacles.
Nice, yeah.
And I can't see, but it almost looks like this person is almost blending into the mane of the horse. It's beautiful. Those are beautiful cards, Megan.
Yeah, it's a beautiful deck. Yeah. So, and that is one thing that with the tarot or anything that you work with, particular cards or symbols can automatically be a particular vocabulary for you, something that triggers that. So,
and it may change, but at this one, so that's why you might get different readings, but again, try to see how they come together too, because I think Megan and I typically have some synchronicity in our readings, even if they seem totally different. When I listen back, I go, oh wow. I needed to hear that, and how that happens.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and to me, that's why it's wonderful to have different readers and stuff. So.
Yes. All right.
Well, guys, thank you all for listening today.
And welcome to spring, officially, I guess, here in Dallas, Texas.
It is officially spring. So.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe. If you haven't, please do so, and please give us a 5-star review if you enjoyed today's show. Keep on listening to Third Eye Thinkers, and we look forward to listening to you next time. Hearing you, speaking to you.
All of it.
Yes.
That's great.
Sharing our lives with you.